Regal Reviews here. Today is TV Show Thursday. I was honestly, really had no idea what I was going to review today. I originally had something in mind, but I decided against reviewing it. So today I decided to go with a classic. Today I wanted to review The Waltons. The Waltons I enjoy watching. I think it's a really good show. It's a classic show that ran from 1972 to 1981, and one of the things I like about it is that it's like a time era show. It takes place in the Great Depression era and World War II, which is the area I'm interested in learning more about. It basically is about this family growing up in the Depression, and John and Olivia are the parents, and John works in the mill, and Olivia is the homemaker, which was, typical of woman role in that time. His dad helps at the mill, and his mom also was the homemaker as well. There's the oldest. They have 7 children, by the way. The oldest is John Boy, and he has ambitions to be a writer, and you see him constantly throughout the whole series trying to work on being a writer. Like, he's constantly writing in his journal. I believe his first novel ended up getting burned in a fire by accident, but he eventually left home for New York City and became a writer, and he even wrote for Stars and Stripes, and he was actually missing in action during World War II, but he ended up being okay. There's Jason, who has a talent in music, and you see him going against what his father wanted for him. He wanted him to work in the mill, but he wanted to work in music, and he got a job working at the Dewdrop Inn, which his mom and grandma didn't approve of at first, and he got a scholarship to school, and he actually was in the, I believe, in the National Guard in the war, and he actually rose to the ranks, but he also did have his career in music, and he ended up marrying and I think he had a lot of children, all named after country music stars. There's Erin Walton, and she's known for being the pretty one. And she's always had a lot of heartbreak with her boyfriends. In fact, one of her boyfriends ended up dying in a training accident, and she's always, like I said, had a lot of heartbreak, and she worked as a telephone operator during World War II era, and then worked from I believe it was a factory she worked for, and she ended up being a principal at Waltons Mountain School and married, but she ended up getting a divorce, which was like something that was kept in the closet around those times. Ben was one of the sons that ended up working in his father's mill, and he actually enjoyed it, but he's always shorter than his brothers, and he always wants to try to be the big man, and he ending up falling in love with Cindy, and they had 2 children, but one of their children, Virginia, ended up tragically dying at a young age. There's Jim Bob, who always has his head in the clouds, and he's interested in flying, and he actually has a dreams of joining the Air Corps, and you see him fall in love from time to time, but we find out that he was actually a twin at birth, and his twin passed away, unfortunately, and you see Jim Bob getting into a lot of situations because, his head's in the clouds a lot, and he joins the army, and he ends up having his own he could ride his own airplanes, and he has his own little airport, I guess you want to call it. Then there's Elizabeth, who's always been the baby of the family and always looking up to her older siblings. I think she's most closer to Jim Bob. And she's always very curious and wants to know everything. She's always wants to be near her mom. And she ends up being quite a well-spoken young lady and not afraid to speak her mind, much like her grandma. And she ends up marrying and, well, no, actually she doesn't end up marrying. She gets engaged to her longtime boyfriend, but she actually went to college, and I think she actually got a PhD, I believe. I saved Mary Ellen for last because she's my favorite. She wanted to go against what was expected of her. She wanted to be more than just a homemaker. She wanted to become a nurse, and I think her story is like a true love story, because even if she didn't want to get married at first, she ended up falling in love with the town doctor, and she's still in nursing school, they end up having a baby, John Curtis, and he gets drafted into the army, and we find out he ended up dying at Pearl Harbor, which was so sad, leaving her with a baby. And you see her still going to nursing school, but also she's kind of overprotective of herself just because that's the only thing she has left of her husband. And you see her trying to find love again, and she ends up falling in love with Jonesy, who is also in the army. And right when he proposed to her, they find out that her husband Kurt is alive, and he's a changed man and doesn't want anything to do with her. And which is kind of sad, but I guess it works out better for her. And she ends up marrying Jonesy, but then because of an accident, she found out that she can't have any more children. So her and Jonesy kind of go through that period. But in the reunion movies, she ends up having more children. So I really like Mary Ellen because she wanted to be her own person. She wanted to make something of herself, and she wanted to be more than just what was expected of her. And I just love her story. I think it's an amazing story. The grandparents were funny. Zeb the grandpa was always very wise and always had great advice and things to say, and he was the patriarch of the family, and he ended up dying, I think, in the 7th season, which was kind of sad, and you kind of saw the family adapting to that. And the grandma, who's always been very outspoken and very opinionated, she ended up having a stroke and lost her ability to talk, and she ended up gaining some of that ability back. So I think The Waltons is a classic show if you love time. I guess that's the word for a time era show. The Waltons is a very good show. It has a lot of great stories that have to deal with the time period that they're dealing with, and just has a lot of good lessons in it. So The Waltons has been canceled for many years, but if you want to check it out, it used to be on Hallmark Channel, but I don't believe it's on Hallmark Channel anymore. I believe it's on INSP. I think it's on at I want to say 3 and 4. I'm not exactly sure on the time, but if you want to check reruns of The Waltons, you can always go on INSP, and I know they're available on iTunes. I hope you guys enjoyed this TV show review. Like, subscribe, and remember, stay regal.